Hello, this is Gene, and I need to respond to or talk about the interview between Piers Morgan and Nick Fuentes. Again, what we saw yesterday was a masterclass in debating, especially the generational differences between both men. And unfortunately, I think Piers is my age. I'd have to go look that up because Nick said he was 60. He's 60, so he's my age. So he's Generation X. So he's not really a boomer, but whatever. That's semantics. But what we saw, the real difference when the generations how they would talk to each other, where Nick was basically trolling him the entire debate until they got to substantive issues. When Pierce would allow him to respond, then we find out exactly how Nick feels on certain things. I'll just say this as somebody at the same age as Piers Morgan. That was a very disgusting display by you. Sometimes you're kind of funny when you have your own show and you say you're on this incensors thing that you always have people on there. Of course, you banned Nick for all that time. But now that Nick is where he is, you want to talk to him. And you think that you're going to take him down by using clips that he's had to respond to for the last 10 years. You're not very smart. And your staff is not really that smart. Especially when we talk about the per capita thing about crime in the United States. And he knows that in England as well. He lives obviously in a very affluent area, if he lives in England anymore, but I'm sure he does. So he doesn't really see as much crime as other people would. So when people talk about white privilege, that's the type of thing they're talking about. But that's really about the money you have, that's the privilege that you have. But I'm just going to go a couple of points that they went through. I think Nick pretty much dominated him when they got to the substance facts of the debate. It was more of a got you type of thing, and Nick just sat there with his with his smirks and all that stuff. And I don't think that Pierce really understands the differences between the generations. And I will say this: he says that I have three sons that just disavow Nick all the time, and Nick at the end said that they were girls, which I thought was kind of funny. But his sons are around Nick's age, 30, 26, 23, something like that. It's doubtful if they don't know who Nick Fuentes is, and they may not know, right? But if he did, I think they would understand that the mannerisms that generation has, and they'll understand that Nick made their father look kind of stupid in so many ways. And so let's just go kind of through it, all right? I think the ones that's getting the most traction now is about the Hitler thing, and he said that Hitler is cool, and then he tried to explain to him what it means, and of course, Piers Morgan had to say he did the Captain Obvious thing that this guy was a monster, and why would you think anybody that's cool that's a monster like that? And what do you think about the Jewish people out there that deal with all that? Now, of course, we know that millions of people died in the war, but it wasn't just Jews. If you're going to go after Hitler because he's this monster, then you need to be faithful to how many people died that he either indirectly or directly was involved with, and they weren't the majority. But just saying that, maybe in their book he didn't like them, even though he had Jews in his staff, he had Jews that fought for him, things that you don't really hear. But this whole came back to the whole thing about, yeah, it is cool because we look at World War II, and most men do this, especially for my age group. I mean, I don't understand why Pierce wouldn't be about that. I mean, he's English, and they have this own mythology of how they stopped Hitler from taking over the world, when what really happened is that Hitler just kind of like stopped and put the gas off for a long time on that, when he had every opportunity to go in and take it off. He never really wanted to do that. But that's something he should be celebrating. I think that they do. I mean, he probably thinks that Churchill's the greatest person of all time. So, there's a blue jay here. So that might be somebody visiting me from the grave. Interesting. It's not Hitler. Okay. So he's trying to explain to him why we like the edits of Hitler, and we see all the white people out there being proud of who they are, and how that it's actually this whole thing that that goes back to the Holocaust and how this narrative has been used against the West for so many ways. That has basically got white guilt and said anybody that rise up that looks like Hitler, we have to make sure and shut them down because those people might become Hitler, right? And this is something that we've been pushed on for at least 50 years, and we have to hear about it all the time. And we taught our kids in school that they should be guilty about who they are, their ancestors, the slavery thing, that it's always a white thing, and it's nobody else. We're the only ones who've done it. And Nick is basically saying this is their own religion that needs to be at some point stopped, and we have to stand up for who we are. And this is all he is, somebody that promotes his own people. Every other group is allowed to do it, and all he's trying to say is that we should be allowed to say it. And the Holocaust and World War II and all of that has been used as a hammer to the back of white people for that long, because we're the problem, that everything's our problem, and the guy that did all this shit happened to be a white dude. So we have to be checked, I guess, because we can't control ourselves. And what's happening now is the younger generation, obviously with the internet and everything like that, they can go and look and see what really happened in World War II, that it wasn't Hitler that started the whole thing. And if you go down that road, you think that there's something more here. But the edits show the really good side of whatever that was. It doesn't show the Holocaust, the atrocities, the shit that his people did. But everybody does that and more. We did it to the Japanese. And the Germans and English did that for 300 years when they tried to rule the entire world. There's been atrocities whenever shit happens, okay? But again, when you look at history, you have to look at it unbiased, and you have to say, what was his motivation? What was their motivation? Why did they actually go into Poland? All that. It's not just something that he just hated Jewish people. It makes no sense that was going on. You can't sit there and try to destroy a country, which we did after World War I. Again, not going after a country that really didn't start World War I, but they went back and they wanted to destroy that country and tried to kill everybody in the country. People don't realize how bad it was in Germany after World War I. And they're still today, they're spending billions and billions of dollars to the Jewish state for reparations for the people that died in the Holocaust. They have not given me any, but anyway. So this has been hanging over white people for a long, long time. And eventually the young people are like, we want to stop this. Now, it may not ever come out if it wasn't so bad in the West right now. If the Muslims are not taking over the West in Europe, and we have our own infiltration here, people are starting to wake up and say, we don't want this, and we should be able to say we have an identity. These are our people, and we should be able to defend them. And you should not be chastised for doing it. There's nothing wrong with it to support your own tribe. And that's all that Nick is trying to say in that. And he said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And he just sat there and he kept saying Hitler's this and this. And Nick is just looking at him like, really? Really? I mean, how many times do we have to say how bad the man was? Again. So that was that one, and it goes for forever and ever about that. And he's like, well, what about Jewish people? What about this guy that lost everybody in his family? And he's like, okay, it's bad. Okay, it had nothing to do with me. That was in Germany 80 years ago, 90 years ago. Let's talk about what's going on right now. Yeah, I'd say that on my channel, but it has nothing to do with but it has, right? It's the afterfact of all that shit, and now that's a fucking their own religion. And we have to stop every time they talk about it. They have to say that that's the most important thing. And all you got to do is look at the SPLC websites or ADL, all that stuff, and they talk about this all the time. And Hollywood, which is run by them, they have 5 or 10 movies every year that talks about the Holocaust and how bad it was. And then we look at all the different media that we have now, the shows that we have, and always you will see that the white person is the villain, and the people of different colors are the heroes. Now, that can be true, but it's not factual in any way. And we talked about the per capita thing, about mass shootings, and 2/3 of them happen to be young white men. And I'm like, okay, we're about 20% or 60% of the population, so that kind of like checks. And then Nick just said, well, can you compare that proportionally to black crime, where they gang violence that they use they shoot people more than 2 or 3, which is to be similar to a mass shooting in school. He said it's the same. He said that their staff said it's the same thing. Clearly, it's not. We do not have that many mass shootings in schools. And Nick tried to frame it and says we have mass shootings outside of the school, right next to the school, that are gang related, and you won't say it's the same, or you'll say that it's more one way or the other. And he said, just give me the I can't say the word. And he said, my staff said it's basically the same. And he said, do you understand what per capita means? They're 13% of the population. And if it's the same, which it's not, but if it's the same, it would be at least 4 times more then, right? So it's like, or 5 times more. So it makes no sense. And the fact that this man didn't understand what that meant or what per capita meant, and Nick is just looking at him and it's got that face. It's like, this is what makes us people that are older in my group to look stupid. To somebody that, he doesn't represent Generation X, believe me, because we are all about the debate. We were the people that used to watch it in the morning in Donahue when they were talking about the revisionists and on the Holocaust. We used to watch that when we came home from school. We like that shit. And I always liked World War II. Most of my movies are talking about World War II. And yes, I have Schindler's List. It's a great movie. It's kind of more not really factual at all. Parts of it is. It was still a good event and all that stuff, but how they used that to even push it even more. And it just changed everything when it comes to that, how we look at ourselves as a people. And why are we the only ones that are just continually said that we're the bad people? And people are starting to stand up about it, finally, after years and years and years. And like Nick said last night, that he'll be the vessel for that. I'll be the one that'll come out and say it. And thank God we have somebody like him, and we're going to need other people like him. But as I've said many times on this channel, Nick is really, I mean, if people actually get really radicalized, because Nick is still a Catholic, if people get really radicalized, we could really have bad things, and that's not what we want. We just want the white man to stand up and defend who they are, and not allow England to be taken over by the Muslims or people in this country being taken over. People like Piers Morgan think it's a better thing because you have different ways to eat food in England, and they think they've evolved in England and London. That's an evolving thing. That's a good thing, and he just basically is a traitor to his own people. Okay, let's just see what else we're going to talk about, and that goes into white guilt, which I kind of talked about. The other big thing is, and he said that it was one of the first things that he came up, and he said he actually was caught off by it because he knew what kind of interview it was going to be, because he's seen Piers Morgan. He likes showing clips and says, now you have to respond to that. And to make yourself, like Lily, when she went on there, she just sat there and said, yeah, I will say it over and over again. He called his dad a racist. And he said, no, because you said it on your show, then I can go ahead and say it. But not only did he do that, he also gave him the name of his dad. So now his dad has to deal with that because he's not a public figure. And this is the same man that's done this many, many, many times before. He's got in trouble before. He's been sued for doing things he shouldn't have done. He's not a great man, to say. He's a personality. He's a celebrity. He has some interesting viewpoints. He's an Arsenal fan, which makes it really bad. But the thing is, why would he do something like that? And he just did it to go after him by that. And it's the same thing. Through the entire movie or my interview, it was more about I'm going to big brother you. And I said that's what Tucker was trying to do, but he did it in a very nice way. And same thing with Steven Crowder. He kind of like big brothered him and just said, well, you want to go ahead and tell me exactly what you believe? But his was not. It was bad faith, and Nick knew that. But he said he was kind of taken back by the fact that he talked about his parents, and he says, my parents are going through cancer right now, and he's got to deal with that. And when I heard all that, and he said that they're struggling, I said, well, Nick, hopefully you're helping them out. I'm assuming that he is. As a Catholic, I'm sure he was taking care of his parents, and that's just wrong. You can say. Everything that he said on his podcast, is fair game. And even if you talked about his dad, he should not all of a sudden call his name out. So now that guy is going to have to deal with that. Anyway. Finally, or not really finally, but the whole women's rights thing. And it also tug tales about Catholicism. Because Piers Morgan believes a Catholic. I think he's pro-choice, which, and he believes he sips for women all the fucking time. He does this shit with Riley Gaines and all that stuff, and I'm with him on a lot of that. But again, Riley Gaines never said shit until that man showed up in her sport on that day. Then she got upset. Where was she before that? Same with Megyn Kelly. Until it actually affected them, then they get upset about it and they say, where are all the feminists now? He was upset because Nick said that, do you think that women should have the same rights that men have? And he said, no. And he says, do you believe the Catholics believe that? And he says, yes, because in the Bible it says that men should not be ruled by women. And that's why women are not Catholic priests. There's a biblical response to that men should be the leaders. Do you think that women should have the vote? Based on what he believes? No. And he can't deal with the fact that this man just responded to that like immediately. No. And okay, let's talk about that for a second. Do you think that having given the women the vote has it been a net positive or a net negative? And I'll let you tell me in the comments, those who actually watch this. I would say a negative, because they vote on their emotion or on one or two type of issues. The women's rights of abortion, that's somehow their right to kill the fetus inside them. As a Catholic, you're supposed to defend life. The Constitution says you should defend life. And this is where we get the Constitution from, our biblical teachings. To sit there and say now that women have got this type of inviolable right to kill their own offspring is antithetical to biblical principles and should be called out. And what's happening just in our lifetime, what they've done in Europe and just said, call the immigrants in here, the migrants in, and now they're complaining now because they can't walk outside at night. And they want men to stand up and do something about it, which we will, but there's a reason why it used to be the way it was. And at the end of the day, men allowed that, so we have to blame ourselves. But again, women already have more rights than men right now. This idea that Piers Morgan has said, you don't believe that women should have, I mean, that's his view, his world view, and it used to be kind of like prevalent for a long time in this country. Even the people, when they got the vote, most people didn't want the women to have the vote because we understood how emotional they can be. And you see what they've had when they have power, when they have actual power, political power in different countries, or when they have power, when they use men, they use the Me Too movement and stuff like that, or the HRs have to acquiesce to their desires and how it destroys certain things in companies. Doesn't mean that men should be doing SA with them. They came into men's spaces and they totally change it. And what does it actually mean to be Catholic? And I think, because when Piers Morgan says he's a Catholic, I think Nick is like, no, really? Then you're not really. He said, do you believe everything in the Bible? Well, he said it's in the inspired word of God. Either you are or you're not, right? Again, you could definitely say, well, I might be skeptical of some of what I read in the Bible. But when you get right down to it, if you're either you have faith or you don't. And he's like, well, and he got called out for that. And I'll just stop with that. What we saw yesterday could have been a very good talk between the generations. And unfortunately it wasn't. Because the older man, the person that should be a mentor type of person, somebody that's been in media for 40 years, could have just said, hey, let's do this. I believe a lot of what you believe, let's do it this way, or this is just my advice on things. That's not what he wanted. He was upset because Tucker didn't really go after Nick, and neither did Steven Crowder. Candace did, again, using the same type of clips and stuff. Back then it was about, he didn't like interracial marriage, and that came up yesterday as well. I'm like, why? It's like people forgot that Muhammad Ali said the same thing 40 years ago. He's like, yeah, I'd rather my people to look my kids to look like me. And everybody's looking at, this is on David Cabot's thing, I think it was. He was like, what are you talking about? And it's like, why would, you don't want your kids to look like you? You don't want the your offspring to kind of like look like you? I mean, that's your offspring. So there's nothing wrong with that. And the thing is, and it all goes back to the same thing. We've been sold this stuff under the guise of the Holocaust and how do we remember everything, and it comes through white guilt, and the media is always pushing. The only oppressor has to be look like me, and we're responsible for everything, and now we have to apologize for everything. There comes a time we can't apologize anymore. And the issue we're going to get is you're going to get the real radicals. They're going to do shit that it's not going to be good for any of us. Or you can have somebody, I think, who's somewhat rational on most of these issues. Do I actually think we're going to tell women they can't vote? That's not going to happen. But we can certainly be more, not strict, but we can check them and not allow them to go along with their primitive ways of doing things in relationships, using their body and that type of stuff. The degenerates that once this social media thing just blew up, that women can become their own star, and their female nature allows them to believe that they actually have this type of power, and then they don't really care about what's inside them when they have babies and shit. They just, oh, what the hell, I can just continue on. And then they're just so delusional they don't understand when they're going to be 40 and there's going to be nobody around and they're on drugs, that they're going to be sad, and you're like, oh, I should have done this when I was younger. As men, we're supposed to lead our women. And you say that's sexist or misogynist. We are called by God to be the leaders in the house. And if we're in the house and you have a nuclear family, there has to be a leader. You can have this conversation when you're trying to do stuff, where we're going to go, what we're going to do in the house. But at the end of the day, the man has to take the responsibility. So if something goes wrong, there's nobody else you can blame other than the man. If you're just wishy-washy in your house, you're going to have a wishy-washy relationship and a wishy-washy house as well. You have to have that, and it's already determined and already talked about and ordained by God. This is what we're supposed to do. So you can't just sit there and say you're a Catholic and you're not a Catholic. Again, there's differences between Christianity and Catholicism. So I have some issues with the Catholics, but the overarching thing is basically the same thing. And this idea that women need to some sort of have a rule over men is the downfall of society, and that this last 40 years of the matriarchal society, we're seeing it the result is here. And a lot of this, when we talk about the Holocaust and all that stuff, it's all based on that, because women they're so apathetic that they just continually, and well, we got to bring in all these, we colonized India, so we got to make sure that they have to be in England and the United States. We have to do that because people like me, 7 billion years ago, went there and colonized it. So now we have to atone for our sins, and we just basically destroy our own society and our own people. It was, in my lifetime, the world population of white people is like 35%. Now it's 7%. So Nick talked about that, about white genocides, and he just won't hear about it. He won't fucking understand it. He's a traitor to the white person. He's a traitor of his age group. And I will never approve that he's in Generation X. He can call himself to me, he's a boomer. He doesn't understand. And the thing is, you think he would. He has young kids. I'm sure they have conversations. And maybe I don't know. And I love what Nick said at the end, that they're a bunch of girls. Anyway, I'm going to stop right now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that Nick won the debate? I think it wasn't even close. I mean, you come in and when you're interviewing somebody or debating somebody and you start from a very bad angle, talking about that person's parents, you're starting off unwell. And you just saw the differences between the two men. He was basically saying he's too young to understand, and now you're 27, you're almost 30, you can't be talking about the Holocaust anymore. Oh, fuck you, Piers. We can talk about everything we want to do in the United States. You just put a former footballer in prison for 6 years because he said some mean things on the internet, on Twitter. You have no stand, you have no leg to stand on here when it comes to free speech. All right, let me know in the comments what you think, and we'll talk about it there. You guys have a good day, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.